decarbonise the air, recarbonise the soil. What are raised beds? A raised bed garden is one where the growing area is lifted above the surrounding soil. This can be anything from 10 centimetres, say 4 inches, up to a metre, about 3 foot. The material also varies from straight compost to a mixture of materials layered one upon another. I would avoid mixing these layers. Mixing soil layers is not a natural process by and large. Nature layers, humans blend, is a good rule of thumb. And the idea behind this entire podcast, of course, is to mimic nature as much as possible, rather than repeat the practices that got us to where we are now. Why do a no-dig garden or a raised bed garden? The first two and most obvious reasons for going to the trouble of building a raised bed are no digging and no weeds. And these are reasons enough for me and maybe you too. The benefits are profound. By not digging, we do not move weed seeds to the surface, we allow the structures in the soil to grow and strengthen, and we mimic nature. Podcast sidetrack. Mimicking nature is a thing we should be more focused upon. Plants have been growing and evolving for about 700 million years on this planet, and they may have some systems of growth worked out that we would be wise to follow. Case in point at work. Once a month, a group of previously troubled 18 to 24-year-olds dropped by the garden at work to pick up some skills that provide a boost of labour. In November, we were sowing a mixture of about 15 different cultivars into the outdoor beds. I ran through my spiel, suggesting small seeds, carrots, rocket and so on, just needed to be spread on the surface, and the watering in process would bury them sufficiently to place them where they needed to be. One young lass would have none of it. She scraped the surface of the bed with her hand to prepare, in inverted commas, the seed bed. She then sowed the seed and pressed down on it. I suggested we do half and half on the next bed. She could scrape half the area for the carrots and leave the other half untouched. She wasn't convinced, but agreed. Next month, when she returned, there was no discernible difference between the two halves, which of course was a perfect opportunity to discuss Masanobu Fukuoka's statement, "What less can I do?" I'm still not sure she was convinced, but the evidence was there. Let's mimic nature. End podcast sidetrack. Other benefits of raised beds include better water usage, more biological activity in the soil, and the creation of a carbon sink. Now, there's several variations of types of no-dig garden and raised bed no-dig gardens that we can use as a gardener. In the processes I use, they all include cardboard as their base level. I used to include newspapers, but these are much harder to get hold of these days, as newspapers go digital. But if you have access to them, use them. After the base layer, your choices come down to a couple of things. The availability of material is the main constraint. What we are looking to create is a deep litter. Ideally, I would fill the bed with compost or vermicompost. In the beds at work, I filled them with spent mushroom compost and then cover the surface with a protective layer. This can be straw, wood chips, or even shredded paper. Another alternative is to place the wet cardboard and then cover it with just straw. To plant, you open the straw, make a cut in the cardboard, and plant the seedlings or seeds directly into the soil. This works well too, but you need to keep an eye on the possibility of weeds sneaking in through the cut in the cardboard. Another variation on this uses 75 to 90 centimetre deep straw, which is about 2.5 to 3 feet in the old money. You place potatoes directly onto the wetted cardboard, then cover them up with that depth of straw. This is a great way to start if it's your first garden, but it does require the garden to have good boundaries, netting, wooden boards and such like to keep the straw in place, particularly in windy locations like northwest Tasmania. The straw should also be thick enough to stop sunlight reaching the spuds and turning them green and therefore inedible. Harvest is easy. You just lift the straw, collect your spuds as you need them, and the straw does give some sort of frost protection far into winter. With any of the approaches, the effect is to stop weed seeds from germinating. The space provides a great growing medium for plants and protects the biology of both the growing medium and the soil underneath from the effects of wind, direct sunlight, and rain-induced runoff. So the exact mechanics of doing this are basically simple. Once you have all your materials together, 1. Soak the cardboard for an hour in water. 2. Select an area of lawn, bare earth, etc. for your raised bed. Slash any existing lawn and say goodbye to it forever. Lay the cardboard newspapers out into the desired shape of your bed. You can add edging at this point if you want. That's not always necessary. And then cover the wetted cardboard/newspapers to a height of 15 to 20 centimetres or 6 to 8 inches with a deep litter, and then water all this down. If you have any worms or vermicompost or worm castings, add them at dusk. Cover the whole thing with straw, wood chips or shredded paper and give it another watering. Next morning, plant out your seedlings. And that's that. And if you're not using seedlings, you can just plant your seed straight into the deep litter that you've created. Your raised bed is up and running. Now, when it comes to deep litter, there's a few choices we have. As mentioned above, it will be the growing medium, and that can be any of the following. Compost, obviously. And this is a simple enough thing once you understand the principles of making it. You can even purchase it. There are some councils that sell or even give away composted green waste. So there's options there for you. I'm thinking of doing a whole show on compost, and I don't think that would be unreasonable. Next choice, number 2, is vermicompost. This is the material compost worms leave behind after they've eaten it, whether they've been eating cardboard or shredded paper or household scraps. They turn everything into a very nice growing medium. Usually contains some worm eggs when you toss that out, so there's a bonus, and it will definitely sweeten your soil over time. Third option is animal bedding, and the best I've ever used was bedding from a couple of dairy goats. Contained urine and droppings as well as dropped food, loose and hay in this case, and their bedding, which was oat and straw. I only had to clean them out every 6 months as the garden beds were being replanted. The goats were healthy and the garden's amazing. Fourth choice is layers of lucerne, or alfalfa as it's known in some parts of the world, lucerne hay, compost and straw. This is your standard lasagna garden design. In a sense, I see this as a non-digested form of animal bedding. It does rot down nicely, but nothing beats the 4 stomachs of a ruminant when it comes to speed and efficacy of deep litter creation. The fifth option, of course, is the just straw, which we mentioned above. This is great for spuds and then for planting directly through the cardboard. And if straw is all you have, then straw is the perfect thing to use. And if you're just growing potatoes, it's perfect already. Well, I hope that's helped rekindle your passion for no-dig gardening in raised beds. And remember, decarbonise the air, recarbonise the soil. This has been a JM Podcasting Services production. Link in the show notes.